With the upcoming release of the Oblivion remaster, it's the perfect time to dive back into the lore that shapes the game's epic tale. This video explores the deep and pivotal moments that form the backbone of the story. Discover the secrets of Emperor Uriel Septim VII's past, including his early life, wisdom, and eventual fall. Uncover the hidden truths behind Martin Septim's childhood and the powerful forces that shaped his destiny. The Mythic Dawn's origins, their dark beliefs, and their betrayal of the Septims also come to light as we unravel the mysterious assassination plot and the theft of the Amulet of Kings. The story culminates in the Oblivion Crisis, where Daedric forces invade Tamriel and Martin's transformation leads to a self-sacrificial final act. With the fate of the Empire hanging in the balance, the consequences ripple through the ages, leaving scars on the world long after the flames of Oblivion fade. This detailed exploration is packed with revelations, but be warned, spoilers ahead for those new to the game. In the turbulent final years of the Septim Empire, Emperor Uriel Septim VII stood as its last beacon of divine authority. Born in 346 of the Third Era, Uriel's reign spanned the Golden Age of Tamriel, though his most profound legacy unfolded at the dawn of the Elder Scrolls IV. Oblivion, known for his wisdom and military leadership, Uriel's fate takes a tragic turn as the Mythic Dawn cult strikes, assassinating him in a betrayal that would unravel the Empire. His death, a result of a treacherous conspiracy, sparks the onset of an invasion from the twisted realms of Oblivion, casting the world into chaos. Yet, before his untimely end, Uriel's life was marked by trials and profound sacrifices. A philosopher king turned shadow strategist, Uriel's last act of mercy was to free the prisoner who would become Tamriel's savior. His death left a profound scar in the Empire, setting the stage for the heroic rise of Martin Septim, his long-lost son, who would ultimately take on the mantle of a reluctant messiah. As the Empire crumbled, so did the once mighty Dragonfire, leaving the world to face the darkness of Oblivion's gates with only hope, sacrifice, and destiny to guide it. Uriel Septim's early life remains a mystery, with little more known than his youthful charm and intelligence, and the fact that he once had an imaginary friend named Justine. However, as he grew older, his true nature began to emerge. As a prince, he quickly proved his exceptional talents, inheriting the best traits of his ancestors. Hardworking, morally grounded, politically astute, and a brilliant military strategist, he achieved numerous victories early on. Likely involved in his father's unification efforts during the turbulent time of Tamriel's conquest, Uriel demonstrated both strength and wisdom, setting the stage for a promising future. In the grand tapestry of Tamriel's history, the Third Empire, or Septim Empire, appeared to stretch its dominion over all lands. Yet, beneath this sweeping presence, the Empire was more a fragile network of alliances, bound by tribute rather than unity. Each kingdom stood mostly independent, with the imperial grip wavering and, in many cases, barely visible. In certain regions, imperial authority was but a distant memory, and civil wars brewed as vassal kingdoms clashed over power, often leading to catastrophic consequences for the land and its people. Rebellions were common, with local lords openly defying the Empire, and at times, entire territories would break away, igniting civil wars under the banners of rival emperors. One such conflict, the War of the Red Diamond, shattered the Empire's foundation and forever marked its history. Through it all, the Empire teetered, a fragile echo of its former glory, always on the brink of destruction, yet never fully falling apart. In an empire held together by a flickering flame, the Dragonfires once blazed with divine purpose, their light shielding Tamriel from the dark plane beyond. But as doubt crept into the hearts of men and the Empire's strength waned, its might became illusion provinces, bowed only in name, loyalty frayed, and authority hollowed. The emperors of the dragon blood, descendants of myth and mortal, were the last to command true power, for only they could ignite the sacred flame that sealed the rift between realms. As the fire dimmed and the last heirs of Septim fought to restore what was slipping away, their efforts faltered beneath the weight of betrayal, secrecy, and rising chaos. The realm's fate, once safeguarded by divine lineage, stood on the edge of unraveling, not by war alone, but by the slow death of belief, unity, and the very light that once held Oblivion at bay. In an age where the Empire's reach was spread thin across its provinces, some places like the Black Marsh, Morrowind, and the Somerset Isles clung fiercely to their native ways, resisting imperial influence. This cultural and religious resistance forced Emperor Pelagius IV to act, striving to fortify the Empire's grip and spread its dominion, though not without struggle. As unrest grew, imperial legions were dispatched, sometimes by force, to impose authority in these rebellious lands. It is said that young Prince Uriel, upon coming of age, might have played a role in these campaigns. The unification of the Empire continued even after Emperor Pelagius IV's death in 368, a year marked by chaos and power struggles. With the passing of his father, Uriel was thrust into a world that would soon be torn apart by dark forces, signaling the fall of the once glorious Dragonfire Empire. In the early days of Emperor Uriel Septim III's reign, he was hailed as a ruler of justice and fairness, surpassing even the legacy of his father. He continued the efforts to unite the empire, often leading his own forces into battle to assert control over distant lands. His reign was marked by optimism, and he was deeply loved by the people for his fairness and courage. During this time, he married the beautiful and widely adored Kavoria, with whom he had 4 children, including 1 daughter and 3 sons. His leadership and personal life were seen as a beacon of hope and prosperity during a tumultuous era. In the empire's royal halls, the tragic tale of Princess Ariella and her 3 brothers unfolds. Behind closed doors, their mother was a woman of manipulation and ambition, a queen who clashed with her husband Emperor Uriel. Their union, once filled with passion, soured over time as she sought power, creating a tense and destructive environment. The emperor, once full of hope, now found himself trapped in a bitter marriage that scarred the childhood of his children. But Uriel's story doesn't end there. His life becomes further complicated as he fathers 2 illegitimate children during this tumultuous marriage. Among them, Calaxis, a son born of an affair, was recognized by the emperor and brought into the royal fold, becoming a significant part of the empire's fate. Their story is one of power, betrayal, and the cost of ambition, a tale woven through the very fabric of the empire's rise and fall. In the twilight of a fading empire, one child born in secrecy was cast into obscurity by the emperor's shadowy blades, while another rose through hidden lineage to earn the title of prince and secure his place within the imperial city's heart. This forsaken child would grow into Martin, a humble priest whose fate would ignite during the Oblivion crisis. Amid an unhappy marriage and growing political unease, the emperor placed his trust in a figure cloaked in ambition and arcane mastery, his personal battle mage and closest confidant, a man named Jagar Thorn, scion of the formidable Thorn lineage, whose influence in the corridors of power would shape destinies as the last embers of Dragonfire dwindled. Cyrodiil and Jagar were key figures on the Elder Council, their strong friendship shaping the course of history. Their alliance proved pivotal in Uriel's efforts to consolidate power, particularly in Morrowind and across the Empire. However, their bond was shattered when Jagar, once the Emperor's most trusted confidant, betrayed him. The betrayal was nothing short of monumental. Using his magic, Jagar imprisoned Uriel in a hidden corner of Oblivion, trapping him in a nightmare realm for 10 long years. Meanwhile, Jagar assumed the Emperor's identity, ruling in his place, manipulating the Empire from the shadow. This dark chapter, known as the Imperial Simulacrum, saw Uriel's true self lost in a world of perpetual torment, while the false emperor continued his reign unchecked. The truth of this deception would alter the fate of the empire forever. In a time when the fake emperor, disguised as Jagar Thorn, kept to the shadows, rarely appearing before the public to avoid exposure, the empire began to wither. His neglect of the empire's rule and politics led to stagnation and internal fragmentation. Many of the empire's vassals regained de facto independence, ceasing to pay taxes and openly defying imperial authority. But the false emperor, enjoying the luxuries of his position, took little action against it. Fortunately, the real Emperor Uriel, the eternal champion, intervened. During the chaos of the first game, the player, as the hero, was able to defeat the imposter and free Uriel. With the false emperor gone, the real ruler returned to restore order, but the empire was forever changed. Once the rightful heir to the throne, the emperor's life took a dark turn after 10 years of imprisonment, haunted by endless nightmares and the betrayal of his closest confidant. This tragic chapter transformed him into a different man, no longer the youthful, impulsive ruler, but a cautious, patient sovereign. With a calm and grave demeanor, he embraced a new approach, moving away from the bold, grand gestures of his youth. Instead, he worked in the shadows, using his secretive agents, known as the Blades, to handle matters quietly, manipulating political relations across the empire and eliminating threats without the need for public confrontation. This period marked a shift in his leadership style, as the world around him became more uncertain and perilous. His reign set the stage for the events in The Elder Scrolls II, Daggerfall, and The Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind, where players find themselves embroiled in the unfolding conflict and intrigue within an empire teetering on the edge of destruction. Somewhere far from the eyes of the world, under orders from the Emperor, a silent agent moves to unravel a rising storm. In the second chronicle of The Elder Scrolls, the agent travels to Hierarch to quell unrest threatening the realm. Later, in the shadowed lands of Morrowind, a nameless prisoner steps onto foreign soil not by chance, but by fate's hand, as whispered by dreams that haunt the Emperor's nights. This prisoner, guided by the hidden blades, is fated to walk the path of the Nerevarine, destined to confront the slumbering menace of Dagoth and perhaps, in deeper silence, challenge the divine rule of Morrowind's immortal tribunal. Why this prisoner? None can say save perhaps Uriel himself, whose visions, shaped by his time in distant realms, hint at futures only he can glimpse. And so begins a tale where prophecy breathes, gods fall, and empires tremble at the choices of one forgotten soul. In the prologue of Elder Scrolls IV, Oblivion, the Emperor's dreams foretold his tragic end, though many, including his loyal blades, were skeptical of their prophetic power. They believed they could protect him, dismissing the grim visions of his death. But the Emperor's fate was sealed. On the day the game begins, the Blades are alerted to a catastrophic evenness. Children, the last of his heirs, are murdered by cultists of the Mythic Dawn. With no heirs left, the Emperor is secretly evacuated from the city to a safe house, hoping to avoid the assassins closing in. But even with the Blades' protection, the Emperor's dream of his own assassination becomes all too real, as the threat looms ever closer. The fall of the Dragonfire Empire is inevitable, and the darkness begins to spread. In the depths of the prison, the Emperor's escape plan begins to unravel. As he attempts to flee, assassins from the Mythic Dawn strike, killing Emperor Uriel right before her eyes, extinguishing the sacred dragonfires that had burned so brightly in his youth. With the Emperor's death, the invasion of Tamriel begins, bringing the dark hordes of the Draw to the mortal realm. Now, the quest to find Martin, the Emperor's hidden son, takes center stage. As players, we race against time, trying to prevent Tamriel's fall by rekindling the dragonfires. But why was Uriel, the last Emperor of Divine Right, assassinated? Was it merely to pave the way for the Draw invasion, or was there something more? The path is steeped in betrayal, dark magic, and the rise of ancient powers, as the Empire collapses and a new world order threatens to emerge. The Mythic Dawn, a secretive and dangerous cult devoted to the Daedric Prince of Decay, sought to shatter the world's balance. With Mankar Camoran at the helm, they believed in reclaiming immortality through a dark, forbidden doctrine, and their ambition nearly toppled an entire empire. During the Oblivion Crisis, this cult had infiltrated every corner of Tamriel, with agents, assassins, and sleeper agents operating under the radar, spreading their heretical beliefs far and wide. The assassination of the Septim Dynasty and the theft of the Amulet of Kings were just the beginning of their catastrophic plot, as they opened the gates to Oblivion and plunged the world into chaos. Their influence reached its peak when they nearly succeeded in their apocalyptic vision, but their twisted plan was stopped, leaving behind a shattered empire and the lingering scars of their insidious reach. In the twilight years of the Dragonfire Empire, a hidden sect emerged from the shadows, bearing a forbidden book and a vision to reshape existence itself. Their goal: to eliminate the Tamrielic Emperor and every heir to the Septim line. But what stirred so many to embrace the Mythic Dawn's heretical doctrines? Their answer defied centuries of divine dogma. While most of Tamriel clung to the tale of the immortal spirits, the Adra, the Magna, and the Daedra Binding, their faith to the divines who shaped Mundus under Lorkhan's command, the Mythic Dawn offered a defiant retelling. In their eyes, the mortal realm was a prison forged in betrayal, a fading cage that drained the power of its creators. Where others saw divine sacrifice, they saw deception. Where the faithful revered the dragonfires, they sought to extinguish them. And thus, beneath ashen skies and forgotten ruins, the spark of rebellion was lit not for gold, nor vengeance, but to reclaim what they believed was stolen, true immortality beyond the veil of the mortal plane. In the early days of creation, a powerful conflict arose. While religions on Tamriel disagreed on the precise sequence of events, most shared the belief that certain spirits fled the mortal world when they realized their power was being drained, leaving behind holes that eventually became the stars. These fleeing spirits, known as the Mag, escaped the collapse of creation, while others called the Adra remained behind to finish the work. But the Adra paid a heavy price, losing much of their power, and would later be worshipped as the divine gods, Akatosh, Dibella, and others from various pantheons. In contrast, the Draw were spirits who would refuse to participate from the start, detaching themselves entirely from creation. The Adra, over time, became central figures in the lore of Tamriel, revered as the gods of the realm. In the world of Tamriel, an ancient betrayal unfolds as a powerful being, once revered as a divine figure, is cast down. This entity, whose identity is debated among the faithful, was initially believed to be a trickster or an outright adversary, depending on one's faith. After his powers began to wane, his deception led to the creation of the mortal realm, the mortal plane, also known as Mundus. The gods who had once revered him turned against him, severing his heart in retribution for his actions. Yet, the Mythic Dawn, a secretive cult, rejects the commonly accepted history of these events. To them, the gods of Tamriel Theodore are false, and the true tale is one of betrayal. They believe that the figure in question, Lorcan, was a prince of change, the first of his kind, destined to rule over a realm of oblivion. Instead, the Adra stole his rightful domain, casting him aside and forcing the Magna Geese to abandon the universe. This mythic narrative forms the heart of the Mythic Dawn's belief, challenging the accepted truth and painting a world where ancient gods and mortal realms are forever entwined in a battle for dominion. Loran's divine creations, such as the DRI creatures like Demora, were severed from their immortality, transforming them into mortals instead of the eternal beings they were meant to be. This break from divinity led them to become bound to the cycle of life and death. Unlike the Dritch creatures in the games who regenerate in the realm of oblivion after being slain, these creations, once meant to be immortal servants of Loran, now walk the mortal realm of Tamriel. The Mythic Dawn, seeing this loss of immortality as an injustice, condemned the Adri gods, believing they stole their eternal birthright, a gift once envisioned by the DRI Prince Lurin. They viewed the betrayal as an unforgivable act, causing them to rally behind Loran's faithful followers, who fled after the gods' betrayal and created the new Prince of Chaos and Change. He came not as a tyrant, but as a brother wronged Lur's brother, seeking to restore what was stolen, the gift of immortality, torn from mortals by betrayal. He believes the world was sundered by false gods and seeks to undo that fracture, to reclaim the lost creation and silence the deceiver who shattered it. In his eyes, this is no rebellion, it is a restoration. The betrayer, once worshipped, must fall. The veil must be lifted. Mortals must rise again. That is the heart of their creed, a solemn vow dressed in fire and prophecy, whispering of a world returned to balance and eternity. In the depths of the Mythic Dawn's belief system lies the conviction that granting Mundsdeen access to the mortal realm is essential for the restoration of their immortality, as well as to remake them according to the original vision of Loran. These beliefs, however, stem from a set of ancient texts, most notably the 4-volume series known as the Mysterium Xarxes, penned by the elusive and enigmatic leader of the Mythic Dawn, Monkar Camoran. This sacred series lays out the cult's most profound doctrines, revealing a deep desire to reclaim lost divinity. Monkar Camoran, who is said to be the son of the renowned Haemon Camoran, was a key figure in the movement, and his writings and actions are central to the cult's dark mission. His legacy, built on ambition and betrayal, forever altered the course of history, shaping the very fate of the world in ways that can never be undone. A young man named Cameron, who would later be known as the Camoran User, nearly brought down the Empire by commanding an army of undead and Draw 166 years before his supposed son would do the same through the Mythic Dawn cult. Cameron, a devoted follower of Mundsdeen, rose to prominence as a champion in the eyes of the Draw Prince. In recognition of his unwavering loyalty, Mundsdeen bestowed upon Cameron the Mysterium Xarxes, a powerful and profane artifact in the form of a book containing the dark words, forbidden knowledge, and immense power of the Draw Lord. Mortals who dare open its pages risk being corrupted and overwhelmed by its contents. But those with exceptional willpower, or those chosen by the Draw Prince, may be able to read its forbidden text without succumbing to its madness. From the shimmering glyphs of the Mysterium Xarxes, he absorbed more than mere dogmae, beheld forbidden truths. Transfixed by its shifting pages, he forged a theology so profound it would ensnare the hearts of many, drawing Tamriel's lost into the fold of the Mythic Dawn. But faith alone could not contain the revelation he uncovered. Within the chaotic lattice of Mundagon's dark dominion, he learned to shape a sanctuary of pocket reality he named Gorada, the promised paradise. There, he vowed, the faithful would transcend death, immortal spirits preserved until the mortal realm could be reclaimed. Trained and tempered in that realm beyond realms, they would one day return not as pilgrims, but as sovereigns when the old betrayers were swept away and their master restored the order of the Unbroken Dawn. Mangar Camoran, a man once dismissed, sought to spread his profound beliefs to the world, but his words fell on deaf ears. Undeterred, he retreated into secrecy, slowly cultivating a following drawn to the allure of his hidden philosophy. It is said that he founded the Mythic Dawn, though some claim the cult existed before him and he simply rose to lead it in this pivotal moment. Regardless, by the time of Oblivion, his influence had grown vastly, with dedicated followers who believed he could communicate with powerful beings, guiding them toward a vision of ultimate immortality. His rise came at the cost of the Septim dynasty, culminating in the assassination of the emperors and the theft of the sacred amulet, setting the stage for the catastrophic Oblivion crisis that would forever change the Empire's fate. The fire of the dragon fires extinguished, and with it, the legacy of the Dragonborn began to wane, leaving a shattered world in the wake of the cult's relentless pursuit of power. In the heart of the Imperial City, the fires in the Temple of the One held a mysterious power that kept the so-called liminal barrier intact, preventing chaos from sweeping through Tamriel. But as the Dragonborn Emperor lit a fire with his amulet, a dangerous plan brewed. The Order of the Magarame began to manipulate their followers, working towards a singular goal, eliminating the Emperor and his heirs while stealing the Amulet of Kings to break the barrier forever. Their vision was clear: without the barrier, their Dark Lord's forces would surge through, taking control of the mortal plane. Years of secretive work, spies, and infiltrations eventually led them to their moment of triumph. Through hidden movements and relentless scheming, the plan was set into motion, and it seemed like their victory was just within reach. In the great Imperial City, the fires that once burned in the Temple of the One held the liminal barrier in place, ensuring that no prince could wreak havoc upon Tamriel. But if the Dragonborn Emperor were to ignite the flames with the Amulet of Kings, Mayans Deen could fall to ruin. Enter Magarame, who with a loyal cult at his side, plots a course to assassinate the Emperor and steal the amulet, thereby breaking the barrier and unleashing his lord's chaotic plans on the mortal world. For years, they infiltrate, spy, and prepare until their plan comes to fruition. And with the Empire's fall, their dark ambitions seem to finally take shape. But in the aftermath, their victory is bittersweet, as the world changes forever. A secret alliance infiltrated the Imperial Palace, eliminating the Emperor and his bloodline, stealing a sacred artifact thought to seal the world against the chaos beyond. But what they never knew was that one hidden heir remained. In a world tearing at its seams, that heir quiet, burdened, and divine arose alongside a silent guardian. Together they shattered the illusion of paradise, silenced the mad prophet within it, and faced the final breach as the last barrier broke. In a final act of grace, the heir relinquished himself to become something greater, a vessel of ancient fire, driving the shadow back and closing the gate forever. As the Oblivion crisis drew to a close, the few remaining followers of the Mythic Dawn were hunted down. Many citizens were unaware of the cult's role in the crisis. But once the truth emerged, groups of relentless hunters set out to eradicate the surviving members and destroy their bases. Their pursuit led them to the discovery of Mune's Razor, a powerful artifact of the Mythic Dawn and its twisted worship. In a monumental effort, they shattered the Razor into 3 pieces, sparking the formation of the Keepers of the Razor, a group dedicated to keeping the pieces apart. Their mission was clear: prevent the dangerous artifact from being reassembled and protect the world from the influence of the Prince of Dra. The remnants of the Mythic Dawn, barely alive after the Oblivion crisis, were hunted down by determined groups, eager to erase the last traces of their dangerous legacy. Most of Tamriel had been oblivious to their role in the outbreak of the Oblivion crisis, but once the truth was revealed, the Mythic Dawn's devoted followers became targets. Relentless hunters pursued them, dismantling their secret bases and eradicating their presence wherever they could. Among the spoils of their raids was Mune's Razor, one of the cult's powerful artifacts. This relic, tied to the dark worship of Mune and the Mythic Dawn, was shattered into 3 pieces, sparking the creation of the Keepers of the Razor. These guardians, charged with the sacred duty of keeping the fragments apart, struggled against time, knowing that if reunited, the Razor could bring about the return of a long-forgotten malevolent force. The story of the Mythic Dawn, once relegated to myth, resurfaces centuries after their downfall. During the 4th Era in the land of Skyrim, in a quiet corner of history, the Dawnstar Mythic Dawn Museum stands as a testament to their once dominant force. Here, we meet Silas Fuius, a descendant of the long-gone cult, who dares to resurrect the shadows of the past by creating the museum. However, the people's disdain for the cult lingers, and even after 200 years, their memories are still raw. As we venture through the museum, a long-lost artifact, the shards of Mehrunes Razor, beckon. The task? To reunite them, facing the specter of ancient enemies while uncovering the truth behind the cult's ambitions. As the quest unfolds, forgotten secrets and bloodlines intertwine, and with each step, the weight of history presses down on us, compelling us to decide whether to embrace the darkness of the past or banish it once and for all. In a grim echo of forgotten prophecy, a fervent priest named Vonos receives a vision from Mayans Deen, a mysterious force rooted in the remnants of dark doctrine. Driven by that revelation, he gathers fragments of ancient gateways, once scattered across the cold soil of Skyrim, forging them into a new portal fueled by the lingering presence of the lost Dragonborn's soul. With ritual precision, the gate is torn open in echo of the first crisis, threatening to spill the chaos of the Dark Plane upon the realm once more. But before Ruin could reclaim Nirn, Vonos is struck down, and his gateway, though still, burning falls under the vigilant watch of the Order sworn to safeguard the mortal plane. And though peace clings by a thread, whispers remain. Should this be the spark of another great invasion? Let it be known it all began here. Emperor Uriel Septim III ruled with a fair hand, gaining respect from the people of Tamriel, but his reign was marred by a series of grave crises that shook the empire. During his time, he faced the chaos of the Imperial Simulacrum, where he was abducted by the villainous Jagar Thorn, and the catastrophic events of the Elder Scrolls II, Daggerfall, which led to the warp in the west. The turmoil continued with the crisis in Morrowind during the events of Elder Scrolls III. Morrowind. Each of these disasters left scars in the land, but the most devastating moment came when the Emperor's once firm rule began to slip, leaving the Empire vulnerable to the forces beyond. Hidden beneath the surface of his reign, Emperor Uriel Septim VII's story carries a forgotten chapter, his own connection to dark worship. During his time as Emperor, Uriel was largely seen as a just and beloved ruler of Tamriel, but his reign was marred by critical events like the Imperial Simulacrum, where he was kidnapped, and the chaos surrounding the Elder Scrolls games, from the warp in the west to the crises in Morrowind. These monumental crises shook the Empire to its core, but none was more disastrous than the Oblivion crisis. As Daedric gates opened across Tamriel, the world was plunged into an era of destruction and despair. Amid the fires and darkness, the true depth of sacrifice was revealed when Martin Septim, the last of the Septim bloodline, emerged from the shadows. His journey from the secret son of the Emperor to the reluctant hero was intertwined with the fate of the Empire. The once mighty Dragonfire was extinguished, and with it, the legacy of the Septims crumbled into ruin, leaving a shattered world behind. Yet, from the ashes, echoes of their sacrifices would resound, haunting the lands of Skyrim and beyond. The final days of Emperor Aurel Septim VII were marked by a harrowing crisis that devastated the Empire. On the 27th of the last seed in the year, 433 of the Third Era, the Emperor was told that all his children, his heirs, had been assassinated. A shadowy force, intent on eradicating the Imperial bloodline, relentlessly pursued the Septim. His eldest son, Prince Galdo, met his tragic end at the hands of his own new wife, who was revealed to be part of a sinister cult targeting the royal family. This organization, known as the Mythic Dawn, worshipped a dark force and sought to sever the last ties of the Dragonborn Septim line, knowing that without heirs, the Emperor's legacy would crumble. Their ultimate aim was to open the gates to a dark, otherworldly invasion, leaving the world vulnerable to their lord's return. The fall of the Dragonfire Empire had begun, setting the stage for an unimaginable catastrophe. The remnants of the Mythic Dawn, barely alive after the Oblivion crisis, were hunted down by determined groups, eager to erase the last traces of their dangerous legacy. Most of Tamriel had been oblivious to their role in the outbreak of the Oblivion crisis, but once the truth was revealed, the Mythic Dawn's devoted followers became targets. Relentless hunters pursued them, dismantling their secret bases and eradicating their presence wherever they could. Among the spoils of their raids was Mayun's Razor, one of the cult's powerful artifacts. This relic, tied to the dark worship of Mune and the Mythic Dawn, was shattered into 3 pieces, sparking the creation of the Keepers of the Razor. These guardians, charged with the sacred duty of keeping the fragments apart, struggled against time, knowing that if reunited, the Razor could bring about the return of a long-forgotten malevolent force. The turbulent marriage of Emperor Uriel Septim VII to Empress Kolavoria brought misery to the Emperor's life and sparked fierce struggles within the imperial family. This union, fraught with strife, likely cast a shadow over the childhoods of his other legitimate heirs. Yet, despite the personal anguish it caused him, one might argue that it was this very marriage that ultimately changed the course of Tamriel's history, for it led to the birth of Martin Septim. Martin, the last of the Imperial line, was destined to save Tamriel in its most dire hour. Born in the Imperial Palace with the Emperor seemingly present, Martin's name is believed by some to have been bestowed by Uriel himself, although the exact circumstances remain uncertain, with others suggesting it could have been his foster parents who chose it. This affair, while born from turmoil, would give rise to the hero who would face the greatest threat Tamriel ever knew. On a storm-wrapped night, the Emperor summoned his most trusted blade into the shadows of his chamber. Without a word of parentage, he placed a sleeping infant into his arms to silent command, cloaked in fire and sorrow. The captain understood. He vanished into the night, crossing darkened roads until he reached a quiet land near the hills of a forgotten village. There, at the doorstep of a humble farmer's home, he left the child swaddled in secrecy and hope. That child would one day rise not as a prince of comfort, but as the final flame in a dying empire. Growing up without knowledge of his true origins, he believed for years that both his mother and father were simple farmers. His mother, he thought, had passed away during childbirth. There was no connection with his real parents, or so it seemed. The Emperor, however, asked his trusted friend, now the Grand Master of the Blaze, to keep a watchful eye on him, but no direct communication with his father ever occurred. Even more puzzling was the fact that Martin never knew his true mother. While details about her remain scarce, there's a haunting possibility that she was killed by orders from the Emperor around 16 years after Martin's birth, hinting at a tragic end to their hidden relationship. Perhaps she once vowed to reveal the truth of Martin's origin, perhaps not. The truth remains lost. Raised on a quiet farm, far from the Empire's eye, Martin grew into a strong and healthy young man, and as his youth faded, it became clear he possessed a rare affinity for the arcane. This gift did not go unnoticed, and he was summoned to the Guild of Magic in Cavage, a place of promise and of peril. There, ambition brewed like a storm. Among fellow apprentices, Martin found kindred spirits, all driven by hunger not for knowledge alone, but for power unbound by guild decrees. Chafing under the weight of rules, they yearned for more. The path they chose was no longer one of sanctioned study, but one veiled in shadow and forbidden practice. And so, led by thirst and defiance, Martin and his companions stepped beyond the threshold of orthodoxy and into a darker calling. Martin's journey into the world of Daedric worship was a wild one, but it wasn't just any cult he joined, it was the carefree and chaotic cult of the Dritch Prince Sanguine, the god of revelry, drunkenness, and indulgence. Sanguine's worship wasn't your typical quiet ceremony, it was about living life in the fast lane, filled with parties, chaos, and an overabundance of alcohol. Martin's rise within the cult was swift, and he even came to hold one of Sanguine's most powerful artifacts, the Rose of Sanguine. It is said that this artifact gave him more power, and he used it to carve a path for himself. But beyond the celebrations and mysteries of the cult, there are whispers, just theories, that Martin's connection to Sanguine might have had a deeper impact than anyone ever realized. Was his time in the cult simply a passing phase? Or did it leave marks that would shape his destiny in ways no one could foresee? During Martin's time within the enigmatic and dangerous cult of the Duke Prince Sanguine, whispers spread among the children, suggesting that he may have had romantic liaisons, potentially fathering illegitimate children. While this remains purely speculative, it sparks an intriguing theory. Could the last Dragonborn trace their lineage back to Martin himself? It's a captivating notion, though we have no solid proof to confirm it. What we do know for certain is that Martin's journey within the cult took a tragic turn when a series of catastrophic events led to the deaths of his friends, deeply entrenching him in guilt and remorse. This haunting experience set the stage for his transformation, pushing him from a man tormented by his past to a figure of sacrifice and divine resolve. Back then, he turned his back on the princes of the Dark Plane and the corrupted worship that once consumed him. It was in this hour of reckoning that he sought redemption not through power, but through humility. He walked away from the ashes of his past and entered the great cathedral in the sacred city of Cavach, pledging his life to the Eight and taking up the name Brother Martin. For years he lived in quiet service, cloaked, not in royal garb but in the vestments of a simple priest, denying the allure of dominion in hopes of atonement. But fate would not leave him in peace. While those who orchestrated the Empire's fall had eliminated nearly all of his bloodline, they remained unaware of his existence. Yet it has long been whispered that a prince of the Dark Plane sensed him that amidst the sacred halls of Cavach, a soul still lingered with the potential to rekindle the dragonfires. Cavage's city stood as the first to fall in the Oblivion crisis, the flames of its destruction ignited by the malevolent forces of the mythic dawn. Amidst this chaos, the legendary figure of Martin Septim emerged not as a fleeing prince, but as a reluctant protector. When Cavach was overrun, Martin barricaded himself in the chapel of Akatosh, shielding the remaining souls with courage and resolve. It is here that we as the hero cross paths with him, uncovering his true identity and leading him to the safety of the Blades. As the conflict with the Daedric invasion deepens, Martin's transformation from humble priest to divinely driven savior becomes the fulcrum of a world teetering on the brink of annihilation. His sacrifice, the culmination of his inner turmoil, forever alters the fate of the Empire, marking the end of an era and the birth of a new legend. In the Elder Scrolls IV, Oblivion, the story unfolds around the crumbling of the Dragonfire Empire, where the player steps into the world of divine and dark forces. Martin Septim, the hidden son of the last emperor, plays a pivotal yet reluctant role. Trained as a priest, he once served a cult before embracing his fate as the savior of Tamriel. As the Oblivion crisis unfolds, the gates to the Dark Realms open, unleashing chaos. With his knowledge of the cult's secrets, Martin assists the player in deciphering ancient artifacts, crucial to stopping the invasion. Despite his resolve, his brief reign as emperor ends tragically as the dark forces, led by Mankar Camoran, thwart his destiny, leading to an ultimate sacrifice. In the end, Martin's story is one of profound sacrifice and the fall of an empire, leaving behind echoes of his legacy across Tamriel. As the shadow of final judgment loomed over the city, Martin raced through the smoke-choked streets, knowing the dragon fires could no longer be lit in time to halt the oncoming tide. Before him stood the avatar of Mewin's Dean, Herald of Ruin, and with grim resolve he understood that no flame could now banish the dark. In a final act of divine desperation, Martin summoned the full might of his dragonborn soul, binding it to the shattered Amulet of Kings. With a thunderous cry, he was consumed in golden fire, his mortal form dissolving as he became the living incarnation of Akatosha, blazing celestial worm whose fury carved the skies. The god dragon clashed with Dean in a cataclysm that tore the veil between worlds, casting the dark entity back into the void. But the price was grave. Martin's light faded with the victory, leaving behind only ash, silence, and a statue where a man once stood. The Oblivion crisis had ended, and with it, the age of the Septim Line yet, his sacrifice would echo across time, remembered not just as Emperor, but as the divine sentinel who saved Tamriel. In the end, his reign was brief, yet it left an indelible mark, one that would echo through the ages. To many, he became a symbol of humanity's finest hopes, revered almost as a hero of the highest order, standing shoulder to shoulder with the legends of old. He carved his place in history not just as an emperor, but as the embodiment of fate itself, a figure whose name would be sung for generations. As I mentioned earlier, this tale is not just about one hero, but two intertwined destinies. If there was to be a chosen one, someone who was to bear the weight of destiny and save the world from an overwhelming darkness, it would be him, not you. You, as a silent observer, guide him toward his ultimate purpose, shaping his rise. This dynamic of heroism, where the true protagonist is not the one holding the sword but the one walking in the shadows, is what makes this story stand out to me, and why, to this day, it remains my favorite of all the tales in the series. In the world of Tamriel, the echoes of the Oblivion crisis linger long after the dust settles. The brave hero of Kvatch and Martin Septim, the last of the Emperor's bloodline, fought valiantly to seal the gates to the infernal realm, restoring peace to a fractured world. Yet, the victory came with a heavy price. The Empire, though saved from destruction, could not escape the far-reaching consequences of the crisis. With the dragonfires extinguished and the throne vacant, Tamriel descended into chaos, its once glorious empire crumbling. The rise of new powers like the Dominion marked a new age, one where the shadows of Oblivion would forever haunt the land. The legacy of Martin Septim lives on, his sacrifice not only securing the fate of Tamriel, but also sowing the seeds of conflict that would erupt in the lands of Skyrim. The world may have been saved, but the scars of that fire would burn for generations to come, forever shaping the destiny of all who dwell within it. The Oblivion crisis left a mark on Tamriel that can never be undone. Though the crisis itself ended, its consequences are still felt today, deep at the heart of Tamriel's ongoing struggles. The crisis was set into motion when the followers of the Dread Prince assassinated the Dragonborn Emperor and his heirs, leaving the Empire without a leader and extinguishing the Dragonfires. These fires had long protected Tamriel from the Daedric princes, and their loss opened the gates to a terrifying invasion. With no Dragonborn left to reign, the Daedric forces flooded the world, and the once stable empire began to crumble. This event ignited a series of calamities that reshaped the future of Tamriel forever. The chaos left in its wake is still at the core of many of Tamriel's current conflicts. But amidst the devastation, one hero rose a lone figure, unassuming yet destined for greatness, who faced impossible odds and ultimately made the ultimate sacrifice to stop the gates from tearing the world apart. Their story, a tale of sacrifice, destiny, and the echoes of the past, continues to resonate. When the Dragonfires were extinguished after the assassination of the Emperor, the protective barrier between Nur and Oblivion weakened, allowing the Daedric Prince of Chaos, Mehrunes Dean, to invade Tamriel. His forces flooded through the gates of Oblivion, spreading destruction and chaos across the land. With no emperor to lead them, the Empire, which once stretched across all of Tamriel, found itself vulnerable and directionless. In the midst of this crisis, the High Chancellor of the Elder Council, a high elf named Okado, stepped forward, becoming the de facto leader of the people, guiding them through the storm with the authority he held. The Empire, though shaken, held its ground as the threat of Oblivion's chaos loomed ever larger. In the wake of an empire unraveling, High Chancellor Cato made a fateful decision that would echo through the ages. Cyrodiil, the heart of the Empire, was to be protected at all costs. As a result, the Imperial legions were drawn away from several provinces, leaving them vulnerable. No one knows the exact movements of the troops, but it's clear that places like Morrowind and Backmarsh saw their defenses weakened in order to safeguard the very core of the Empire. This bold, yet controversial choice would alter the course of Tamriel for centuries. For the cost was high. Provinces were left exposed and fragile, their strength diminished in favor of preserving the heartland. This chapter in history set the stage for power struggles and eventual collapse, a ripple effect that would be felt long after the flames of the Dragonfire Empire had flickered out. After the Oblivion Crisis, Morrowind found itself helpless against the relentless hordes of Oblivion. The Empire, unable to provide aid, left the province feeling abandoned and resentful. The people of Morrowind, who had already grown weary of playing a secondary role to the Empire, now saw their faith in it crumble. The final blow came when the eruption of the Red Mountain during the Red Year further devastated the province, rendering parts of it uninhabitable and leaving its population starving. Despite the cries for help, the Empire, still weakened from the Oblivion Crisis, failed to act. This failure solidified Morrowind's decision to sever ties with the Empire, casting off its influence for good. The once proud province, now broken and isolated, faced an uncertain future. The Empire, still recovering from the devastation of the Oblivion Crisis 5 years prior, was led by High Chancellor Okado, who found himself caught in the grip of chaos. Amidst the ruins, he longed to unite the realm, seeking a new emperor to guide the fractured empire through the ongoing hardship. Yet, in his decade of rule, marred by economic collapse and widespread instability, he failed to find the legitimate successor the Elder Council would endorse. The Oblivion Crisis had shattered everything, including the long-standing tradition of having an Emperor of Dragonblood to ignite the Dragonfires and protect Tamriel. The search for a worthy heir seemed impossible, leaving the Empire in disarray and darkness. The fire that once burned bright, guarding the Empire from the encroaching threat of Oblivion, flickered and faded, leaving a fractured world in its wake. The Emperor's power, tied to the divine right of protecting Tamriel, no longer had purpose. With the barrier sealed and the threat of Oblivion forever closed by you and Martin, the Dragonborn's bloodline lost its significance. No longer was there a divine mandate to rule. The throne, once a symbol of strength and divine right, became a battleground for anyone with enough ambition. As the Empire crumbled, only figures like Okado, wielding influence without the need for the Dragonfire, could claim a semblance of power. And so, the Empire fell into chaos, with no true ruler left to guide the shattered remnants of a once great nation. The age of emperors had come to an end, but the legacy of their fall would echo throughout Tamriel for generations to come. After the Oblivion Crisis, the Empire was left in ruin, its once mighty foundation crumbling as the Dragonfires, the sacred lifeblood of the throne, flickered out. With the bloodline of the Septums no longer essential for succession, the Elder Council wrestled with legitimacy and no clear heir emerged. Chancellor Arado, the Empire's guiding force through the crisis, assumed the role of potentate. Yet his rule was frail, resources were scarce, and decisions made in haste had drained the Empire's strength. Meanwhile, new forces stirred in the shadows, and the collapse of the Empire hinted at the rise of a new, ominous power on the horizon. As the world watched, the legacy of the Dragonfire Empire seemed destined to burn itself out, leaving only echoes of a once immense rule. In the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis, resentment began to stir across the provinces, culminating in the rise of a faction in Black Marsh, known as the Ancillil. They seized control of the province, expelling the remaining Imperial forces, and claimed their victory over the Oblivion Gates as their own, casting doubt on the Empire's version of events. The Ancillil, who had fought alongside the Argonians in the wake of the crisis, argued that it wasn't the actions of Martin Septim and the player character that sealed the gates, but rather a secretive plan that they had set in motion. They boldly declared the Empire's story a lie, spreading their own propaganda to shape history in their favor, while the flames of resentment continued to grow. As the crisis in Agonia reached its zenith, a powerful shift occurred when they were the ones who ultimately ended the turmoil. The Empire's withdrawal of legions from the region left the people to reclaim their strength, fostering a deep resentment toward Imperial control. This move paved the way for the rise of the Enel, who, driven by vengeance against the Dark Elves for their long history of enslaving the Argonians, launched a fierce invasion of Morrowind. The Empire, once again, turned its back on the province, leaving it to fight for its survival. This abandonment ignited the fall of House Lu, the once proud pro-Imperial house of the Dunmer, who were ousted from power. The echoes of this betrayal would resonate for generations, marking a new chapter in the Empire's frail history. In the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis, the world of Tamriel fell into turmoil. The collapse of the Empire's authority left a power vacuum that factions like the Thalmor eagerly filled. The anti-Imperial sentiment spread far and wide, and the truth about the heroics of Martin Septim and the Empire was twisted by those with their own agenda. The Thalmor, in particular, spread a lie that they were the ones to end the crisis, gaining influence and eventually toppling pro-Imperial factions, even going so far as to assassinate key leaders like Okado. His death only accelerated the chaos, triggering infighting within the Empire and leading to a civil war that would unravel the once mighty Dragonfire Empire. The ashes of this once glorious civilization now serve as a grim reminder of the fragility of power, leaving the world forever scarred by the fires of oblivion. Do you like this personality? The Storm Crown Interregnum was a 7-year period of chaos that followed the assassination of Ocadus, fracturing the Empire and leaving its influence severely weakened across Tamriel. The death of the Emperor sparked a struggle for power, and when a new Emperor, a conqueror named Titus, emerged, he found himself facing the colossal task of reuniting the scattered human provinces. His efforts were nothing short of monumental, involving battles across Cyrodiil itself to reclaim authority over the land. Despite the turmoil, Titus succeeded in reconquering the human provinces and Valenwood, and through shrewd diplomacy, he secured the allegiance of Summer's monarchy to the Empire. However, the fate of Blackmar and the status of Morrowind remained unclear, leaving questions unanswered about the full extent of his empire's restoration. In a world shaken by political upheaval and internal strife, the Empire's once unyielding dominance begins to crumble. The new Emperor, though heralding a new era, faces a relentless storm brewing on the horizon. The Thalmor, a faction fiercely opposed to imperial rule, rise against the pro-imperial Somerset monarchy, overthrowing it and declaring independence. Years pass, and the winds of change grow colder as they launch a coup against Valenwood, bringing it into the fold of the Thalmor state, the Altmerry Dominion. The Empire's authority weakens, and the stage is set for a silent, bitter Cold War between the two powers. Over a century of tension and disdain follows, both sides waiting, silently loathing each other, knowing that only a war could end the standoff. And as foretold, the war does indeed come, changing the fate of Tamriel forever. The great conflict between the Empire and the Altmerry Dominion tore through the lands of Tamriel, leaving scars that would never heal. This war, culminating in the White Gold Concordat, which outlawed the worship of Talos, sparked the civil war in Skyrim. 2 centuries after the Oblivion Crisis, Tamriel is still scarred, the echoes of that dark time resonating throughout the world. The civil unrest in Skyrim, the Stormcloaks rise, and the political tensions all trace their origins back to this tragic event. Even the rise of the Thalmor, now a powerful force, was made possible by the crisis, their influence spreading as a result of the devastation. Morrowind too, once strong, now lies in ruin. In this new world, the past continues to haunt the present, and the future remains uncertain, as the scars of Oblivion linger on, shaping the fate of Tamriel forever. Had the Empire not withdrawn its forces from the province during the Oblivion Crisis, it could have prevented the devastation that followed. This would have given them the resources to respond more effectively when the Red Mountain erupted. The Empire might have also supported the rebuilding of Morrowind, preventing the rise of new powers like the Ancel, who wouldn't have had the same opportunities without the chaos of Oblivion's aftermath. Without this crisis in Black Marsh, the Argonian invasion of Morrowind may have never occurred, and the deadly purge of the Bosmer and Valenwood, loyal to the Thalmor, would not have been necessary. The Thalmor's rise itself may not have happened if the Oblivion Crisis had not left the Empire vulnerable. The Orcs, too, would not have been forced to relocate to Orsinium, their ancestral home, had the Empire maintained its strength. The ripple effects of the Oblivion Crisis reshaped nations, communities, and entire histories in ways that would otherwise never have been imaginable. In a world shaken by political upheaval and internal strife, the Empire's once unyielding dominance begins to crumble. The new Emperor, though heralding a new era, faces a relentless storm brewing on the horizon. The Thalmor, a faction fiercely opposed to imperial rule, rise against the pro-imperial Somerset monarchy, overthrowing it and declaring independence. Years pass, and the winds of change grow colder as they launch a coup against Valenwood, bringing it into the fold of the Thalmor state, the Altmerry Dominion. The Empire's authority weakens, and the stage is set for a silent, bitter Cold War between the two powers. Over a century of tension and disdain follows, both sides waiting, silently loathing each other, knowing that only a war could end the standoff. And as foretold, the war does indeed come, changing the fate of Tamriel forever. The moment the last Dragonborn Emperor fell, the fate of Tamriel was sealed. The invasion was stopped, but the consequences were irreversible. The assassination of the Dragonborn Emperors triggered a series of events that would plague Tamriel for centuries. The Empire's collapse sparked a brutal war with the Dominion and tore Skyrim apart in a civil war. At the heart of it all stood Martin Septim, once a humble priest who was thrust into the role of the last hope for Tamriel. His journey from a secretive childhood to the reluctant hero who made the ultimate sacrifice shaped the course of history. The Oblivion Crisis may have ended, but its scars, deep and lasting, continue to echo in the ruined empire and the shattered realm. Martin's sacrifice left an indelible mark on the world, forever changing the lives of those who followed. In the world of the Dragonfire Empire, the last emperor, Uriel Septim VII, faced betrayal and the destruction of his reign. Once a bold leader, he became a shadow strategist, struggling against forces that sought to unravel everything he had built. Meanwhile, Martin Septim, a reluctant hero with a hidden past, emerged from the darkness. His journey from Daedric worshipper to the priest of Akatosh was marred by personal conflict as he carried the burden of a secret and the ominous fate of the Empire. As the Oblivion crisis unfolded, the gates to a dark plane opened, bringing devastation and chaos. The hero of Quach rose to meet the challenge, but it was Martin's transformation into the avatar of Akatosh that would bring about the ultimate sacrifice, sealing the fate of the Empire. The dragon fires were extinguished, and the legacy of Martin and Uriel lived on in echoes across the land. With the rise of new powers like the Dominion, the world was left scarred, forever haunted by the fire of Oblivion and the fall of the Dragonfire Empire.